Hold up. Park it. Kick back, spark it. Welcome to the spot where money talks honest. Yeah. This is Gosh Talk with Bill Haase. Real life money in your front seat. From the paycheck to the profit. Turn that I don't know to I got this. Gosh Talk with Bill Haase. Blueprint stacked on the workbench. From the hustle to the harvest. Learning what they never really taught us. So if you're tired of the fine print winning, slide a chair in, that's a new beginning. We keep it straight, keep it smart, keep it classy. You're tuned in now, Gosh Talk with Bill Haase.
Welcome back to Garage Talks with Bill Haase. I have a special show today. Going to play a little role reversal here. Recently, I had the privilege of being interviewed for my good friend Jo Jackson in Sydney, Australia, on her show called Think Uncommon. It was such a wonderful interview. I wanted to share it here because she's an amazing person, a fellow author, and I had the distinct privilege of sharing a dinner and conversation with her while I was out there. So please listen in because this is a really good one.
We are here today with Bill Haase, a genuine man who has an immense history in finance, from the trading room floor to investments to working with the US military, writing a book on money mindset. Billy's going to share with us some pretty cool stuff on how we can shift what we think about money and how it can have a huge impact on our future. Welcome, Bill.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Joe. It's wonderful to see you again.
Likewise. Bill, you and I had a fabulous conversation recently in Sydney over dinner where we talked quite in depth about life, experiences, and how money shapes our decisions in this world. If you were to coin a phrase that you want people to remember in relation to money, what would it be?
Boy, coin a phrase. There's a couple that come to mind. One is just what you are not aware of controls you, and most of us are not aware of money, so it does control us. And the other line, the question I always like to ask is do you live your life with intent or by default? And the reason why I ask is I know most people live financially by default.
Mm.
We aren't taught anything about money, and it's
Well,
true globally. It's everywhere.
absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. I grew up with the message that money was the devil. Money is the root of all evil, is what I was brought up with. Now, for those people who read the Bible, they understand that there's a little bit extra to that that's not often referred to. So I was brought up with money is the root of all evil. Do you think that that has shifted?
Yes, it is shifting. That's one of my goals is to help that shift move a little bit more quickly. From my generation on up, we were taught that talking about money was taboo. You're just not supposed to talk about it, not with your spouse, not with anybody. And so therefore you wouldn't talk to your kids and they wouldn't learn anything and they'd go through the same struggles. And all we want is for our kids to have a better life. And how are we going to give that to them if we don't teach them about life?
Yeah, so true. I was definitely of that generation. Nobody ever spoke about money. So then when I found myself managing money, I had no guidance. It wasn't
Yeah.
taught in school. We get given a Dolomite Saver account from the Commonwealth Bank here in Australia when we're in kindergarten. The banking representative used to come out to the school and they had these cute little yellow money boxes. And they get us to open up a bank account and they teach us about you put money in the money box and you take the money box to the bank and then you put all the money in the coin machine and then it counts it up and then it goes into the bank account and then you're saving. And we're going, great, but I want lollies.
Yeah, right. Even at that age, you're already thinking of what you wanted to buy with it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, money's with us from birth through death. And those first 20 some years or so, all our needs are met. So all we focus on is the wants. So
Yeah.
then we get out into the real world and our parents say, oh, you're done with, university. Now you're off the payroll. Go out into life, show them who you are and what you got, and God bless you and good luck.
I've done my bit.
About the worst thing you can do to somebody at that age, because all of a sudden there's all these needs and they're like, how am I going to take care of that?
Yeah.
What do you expect me to do? Well, get a job and learn as you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that causes so many other problems in life. I mean, how do you know it's the right job? Is this a career job or is this just get a paycheck, which then turns into living paycheck to paycheck, and that's a hard life. Um,
Mm.
in America, about 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck, and they don't have to. Nobody does
Wow.
anywhere in the world.
I'm going to
Most
ask
don't.
a question. I'm going to ask a question here that might be a little bit direct, but how much do you think the government of any citizen is responsible for how a person lives?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, tremendously, right? The government makes choices every day that costs us money, whether it's taxation or tariffs, that we've seen lately. Um, there's how much debt that a country takes on has a
Mm.
huge impact. Interest rates have a huge impact, and governments can affect interest rates
Yeah.
to some extent.
Mm, yeah, I find that in Australia here there is a lot of financial illiteracy. For instance, in the monthly Reserve Bank announcement, it'll be on TV and it'll be, well, the rates did this or the rates did that, and everybody then used to wait to see what the big banks did in relation to mortgage rates. And if the RBA put the rates up, the banks put the rates up, and it was consistent. What the RBA did, the banks had to do. But then the interest rates at the banks were separated from the Reserve Bank. But the message wasn't really promoted. So even now, years after the RBA has been disconnected from the banks with regards to interest rate rises, you'll still see the same announcement on the TV. The Reserve Bank put the rates up today. We're waiting to see what the mortgage rates will do. And it's like, well, the banks don't have to put the mortgage rates up. They don't have to move the mortgage rates. They are no longer linked to the RBA. But the message that the media is perpetuating is that that relationship still exists. So people sit there and they wait to see, right, what's happening with our interest rates. We're at the moment on, I think, about the fifth interest rate rise. And there is immense amount of pressure in our country at the moment for people to survive, let alone thrive. It's almost like thriving is completely out of the question. Everyone's stepping back into survival mode. We have a
Yeah.
government that's going and spending excessive amounts of money. We've just hit $1 trillion of debt in Australia. And in 2009, we had no debt. We
Oh
were
boy.
equal. We were balanced on parity.
Interest rates are, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I was a trading pits in Chicago here, and 16 years of those 20 years I was in the pits, I was in the interest rate futures, the world's largest trading pit. So imagine 1,500 people in one pit. That's we will talk about that probably more later, but I learned a lot about interest rates. And when you talk about the federal bank doing interest rates and then the regional banks come out to do their interest rates, there's a lot more to it than just they're going to raise it what the federal raised it. They're going to front run it because is there a potential for the next rate conversation to be even higher, or is it going to be lower? And where do I position myself as a bank to take advantage of that to some extent? And if the banks in Australia or anything like the ones here in the U.S., um, they have several different ways in which they calculate how they lend that money out. So, one person may pay more than another. And, we have things like credit scores. A bank will tell you, oh, here's your credit score, but go ahead, go into that bank and say, all right, lend me money on that based on that credit score. Well, what type of loan do you want? Because we We don't necessarily use that number.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But if you do X, Y, and Z, we can use that number and it's going to cost you additional interest.
right.
Just because we know
Well,
how desperately you want the thing.
absolutely, and that's a whole nother conversation. Desperation about how badly people want things, and that's a topic called surveillance pricing. But that's a whole different world. But
That's a
interest
very
rates are
good
very,
topic.
very interesting. Yeah, I in my time I was recently there visiting in Sydney and had the distinct privilege of seeing you. And um, one thing I noticed, and I knew anyway, was that when America's hurting, and we are, the rest of the world's hurting more,
Mm.
and you are. And I saw that, and it saddened me. But it just drives me more to do what I'm trying to do and help people get control of their money so they can not worry about it as much.
Yeah, well, it is a big concern, right? You talk to families these days, the number one concern is how do I provide? And then the next concern is how do I look after my children's future?
Yeah,
Both very real.
both very real. And the hard part is we aren't taught about how to plan for that.
No. So take me back to the trading floor. I am a 70s kid. I watched Wall Street.
Okay, yes.
That was my first introduction to how a trading floor works. I had no idea about shares, stocks, or anything like that. And I remember one of the first things that really captured me about that movie was this preference for perception. It was, well, the market seems to move on what people think. And so I remember watching this movie thinking, there's got to be some kind of data, some kind of fact, some kind of anchor that this all sits on. And even at the ripe old age of junior school, I'm scratching my head thinking, surely this can't be it. So take me through a day in the life of a runner on a trade floor.
Well, it's so I was I started off in the stocks and stock options, moved through risk arbitrage, which was if you remember 1987, October 19th, Black Monday. I was very, very much a big part of that. Sitting in an office selling $15 million baskets of stock by hitting buttons,
Mm.
one right after the other. The market went down 22.4% that day, the most in the history. But I spent 16 years in what was called Eurodollars, which were 1,500 people. So when you see those stock pits and those guys kind of going crazy, that's 20, 30, 40 guys.
Mm.
Try 1,500 people. It's a whole different world, different culture. You have to learn. It takes years to learn how to really do well in an environment like that, because it's all alpha people, men, and
Mm.
there were a few women, but mostly men. And uh, it was there were some really crazy times when the markets when they would put up on the screens and they would say it's a fast market.
Mhm.
That meant the rules are out. You're on your own, so you better make sure what you're doing.
So what does that mean in compared to any other normal day? We've got our bull market, we've got our bear market, but if we've got a fast market where it's, what is that, like martial law?
So a fast market happens when, say, information comes out from the government, whether it's the GDP, which is telling you the inflationary numbers, which
Mm.
affects interest rates, right? Unemployment number, unemployment Friday, the first Friday of every month, is the most important day. We used to say the only way you can miss unemployment Friday is the birth of your child or you die. That's it. And that's how serious it was to be in that pit at that time.
Okay.
Um, but you're right. It's there's speculation going on, and there's you're trying to anticipate based on information that you have learned to acquire that can help give you some guidance. But it still comes down to speculation because what if you're looking at the wrong piece of information? What if the
Mm.
market isn't moving based on that piece of information that day? It's moved on a different piece of information that day or even that moment. It's just it's how I've learned to only eat once a day because you never left the pit.
Yeah. And I have a friend of mine that spent 20 years in trading here in Australia, and he eventually had a nervous breakdown, agoraphobia, all sorts of immense psychological effects as a result of that. He left the environment and completely backflipped, started going into Vedic meditation, and now has a business and speaking gig around the world, teaching people about how to meditate and how to bring your nervous system down, the parasympathetic, sympathetic states, and how what he did in that environment, it was the fast life, and we all know what that means. Everything was on the table, but what he didn't realize was that piece by piece, his nervous system was being destroyed. Given the fact that you stayed in that environment for as long as you did, how did you manage to do it without ending up in the same plight?
You know, and to understand, I was not a trader in the pit. I was a broker on the phone. So I had clients all over the world. I had banks I was talking to, international traders,
Mhm.
advising them on how to protect US dollars in foreign markets from things like interest rate fluctuations, currency fluctuations, tariffs, wars, and things of that nature. Um, but you're still in a high risk situation. And I don't know, it's the type of people, but there's no cookie cutter person that fits well into that environment. You'll never know until you actually get in it, and you either love it or you can't wait to get out, or you get kicked out, which is more common.
It's fair to say, I imagine there'd be a lot of people that think that they can cut it, that are very discreetly given the back door, or perhaps even very publicly given the boot.
You know, having a large ego doesn't hurt. Confidence is better. That
Mm,
confidence is developed over time. Ego is what you start with, and that can get you in a lot of trouble
mm.
very quickly,
I bet you saw that a lot too.
all the time, all
Yeah.
the time.
So 1987 must have been quite an event to be part of. I know that here in Australia we saw the impacts of it, and I saw things on the news that you just can't unsee. And it was one of the first times that I understood the fear around the connection that we have to money.
Absolutely. It it's great when we have a bunch of it, and it's the worst thing in the world when we don't have any of it. And why do we want it? Perception, status. We want to, there was a term used in the pits, and I don't know if I can use it on this show, but let's just say the big boys were called big something something and big swinging something, and they would rule. They would rule that environment. We all
Yeah.
knew who big traders were, and we all knew who to, don't cross them. They'll destroy you because they can afford to,
Yeah.
and then you also knew who the new guys were, and you wanted to help them. But, there were tricks too. I mean, new guys would get into the pits and they'd have big egos and think they were going to do well. And they'd survive 3, 4, 5, 6 months and they thought they were doing really well. But it was the big boys letting these little guys make enough money to make it worthwhile to come in and take it all away from them. They were using them to build up that little bank account that they had gotten from mom and dad, that 50,000 or 100,000 to start out, and
Yeah.
as soon as they got up into and the worst thing is if you do your first trade and you make a bunch of money, now you think you're smart. Now you think you know what you're doing, and trading pits are a lot like gambling houses. The house usually wins.
I think that's good advice. The house usually wins. I see people that forget when they go and get involved with gambling, or they get involved with trading, or they get involved with currency. And it's don't forget, this system is not designed for you to win unless you learn how to play the game, and you have to play it infinitely. If you're
And
in
you gotta learn fast.
Yeah, yeah. If you're in for short term, it's literally just roll the dice and hope and pray, and you might get lucky, get your money, get out, be happy. That is not skill.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's skill is developed later on through survival. And I like to say I survived 20 years in the trading pits because I never became a millionaire. I didn't. make a whole ton of money, and a lot of people will look at me and say, "Are you kidding? We thought you were like super rich," and it's not true. Um, I just learned a lot about money, and now what to help other people learn about money.
How would you describe the ethic on a trading floor?
You'd be surprised. You have to be very ethical, or you won't last long. You
Hmm.
you 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 rely on each other. You're a family. You fight all day long against each other to buy and sell and trade your positions and everything else. But as soon as that bell goes off at the end of the day, you look at each other and go, "Hey, where are we going off it? We taking the wives out to dinner?" Even your biggest competitors. I managed a Japanese brokerage group, and there were two or three others. And I remember uh, stealing, I guess you could call it. I stole a client from one of them. It was a guy, a trader in Singapore called the General, and we get to a certain point in the trading pits where you see what guy on the desk at what time of day is putting an order in what part of the pit and what's the size of the order. You know who the trader is and where he is in the world. And so I did that one day, and then I went golfing with one of the other guys who ran another Japanese desk, and he looks at me and goes, "You son of a bitch, you landed the General." I said, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about," but he knew. He knew.
There's status right there.
That is, and it's and you don't. Again, money was taboo even in the pits. You don't talk about I had a great day, I made $1 billion,
Mm.
or I'm crushed. Being crushed was pretty obvious, and I've been there too. And but nobody talked about pretty even. You maintain a pretty even level, of anxiety. I guess it would be. But you never gave up if it was a great day, good day, bad day. Um, that
So you
just
learn to play the game.
but the ethics were there because you had to deal with each other every day,
Yeah,
right? If I knew you lied, cheated, and stole, why would I ever do business with you?
yeah.
And I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with 1,500 other people, or we don't have a choice. There's nowhere else to stand. So, I mean, there might be other things that go on in a pit that changes that strategy a little bit. And biting, kicking, punching, stabbing, stomping on a foot, an elbow to the face, maybe
Well,
when
that
your
is a
arm,
pretty public statement. Yeah.
you know,
There's
there
no
might be
denying that. So you've mentioned previously that you did have your own personal story with regards to buying a home and buying a construction home and subsequently losing it in the housing crash. And I find that when I speak to people about some of these defining moments, they always learn from it, evolve and step out of that situation with a new identity. When you went into this, no doubt you didn't go into the investment expecting to lose. How did you manage that as a family man who has stood up and said, this is the right thing for us to do, and then have to recoil and make a different decision?
That's a great question because I thought it was a very important part to put in my book, probably the hardest time of my life. Um, Classic case of being a trader, making his first trade and doing really well. I bought my first home and did very, very well. Almost four times the value, or no, 2.5 times the value of the home I sold it for 11 years later, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And uh, and so what did I do? I went out and built a brand new home further away from where I was at. I was in an area outside of Chicago that was very affluent, and I didn't want to raise my kids in that environment. I didn't want them to grow up with that pressure. And so I moved out more further into the country, but I built a nice, beautiful home in a neighborhood. Many other homes are being built, same price. And a few years later, the homes around me were starting to sell at about 40% of the value I paid for my home, and they had paid for theirs. It was even below that.
Wow.
And I just said, and I had sunk all my money into it. And then I lost my career on the trading floor because computers took over.
Mhm.
And I knew that well because I was the first whatever in the history of the U.S. to trade electronically and pit trade at the same time, side by side. So I saw it coming, but I was already building the house. And you didn't know how fast it was going to come, didn't know how hard it was going to hit. So I lost my career at a time that the economy was starting to tank. And the housing debacle was happening, and then my wife lost her job, and it was a perfect storm. Does that mean I couldn't have been prepared better for it? I easily could have, but I didn't because I didn't know. Nobody
Yeah.
taught me, nobody told me, and I didn't know at that time. I still had a lot to learn, and the good Lord was just saying, "Okay, bank this in your mind." Um, but it was an extremely painful time. And so even knowing everything I know about money at that time and interest rates and housing markets and things like that, it still caught me.
Mm.
So
I think that's a valuable lesson.
it
Absolutely.
yeah, it could catch anybody at any time. That's life. You know, life happens.
It's also the awareness that you talk to, isn't it? About you can do the right thing for the right reason at what you perceive to be the right moment, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to end up the way that you expect it to. And
I
the what you think about that.
I can guarantee you it won't end up the way you think it will.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, pretty much 100% of the time.
Which brings us to the reality expectation gap, right? We live our life on the basis of expectations that are largely given to us by the external world, whether it be social media, friends, family, etc. And so we go out and we make decisions on the basis of expectations, and quite frequently those expectations don't come to fruition, and we're left with this gap of what does that mean? So
Yeah,
what did it
well,
mean about you?
it means that you're ill prepared for what's really going to happen, you
Yeah.
know, or what can happen, and you're in a vulnerable position, and that's a scary position for anybody to realize that that's where they might be at, um, and it's almost always tied to money. I mean, I can tie everything to money to some extent, and how we are all controlled by money to some extent, some more than others, most more than others, and
Yeah.
how that harms us, how that people can take advantage of us because of that. And they do every day. Um, it's just the interesting part, Joe, is if money's so important, and it has been for thousands of years,
Yeah.
why doesn't anybody do anything to learn about it?
Mm.
I couldn't understand that. And I didn't either until 4 years ago when the good Lord tapped me and said, I need your help. And then I learned.
Super interesting. And we learn more often than not out of necessity. When you have that moment of adversity, when you're sitting in the impact of the decision that you've made that hasn't gone according to expectations, and that's when we have a decision to make. And you saw it in 1987. Some people make a decision that I can't cope with this, I'm out. And they make a final decision to end their lives, which is just I see how that can happen depending on the level of debt and the level of identity you have associated with who people think you are. So that when
And
it's found out or when you've made a mistake that you can't reconcile in your own mind, I can see how people get to the point where they think there's nothing left and they make rash decisions off the back of that. But that's not what you teach, is it?
no, but the important thing there is to learn, you learn what kind of person you are.
Mm,
And there was a day in the pits where I learned what kind of person I was. And it was pull your boots up, put on a glove, and get back in the game.
mm,
Either that or crawl up into a ball. Because and those were the two choices. And in 1987, yes, I knew people that took their lives.
yeah.
Um, and I knew other people that were screaming, "Wahoo! Volatility! Let's take advantage of this." it's the whole spectrum. Um, it's I'm sorry, I've forgotten your question now because I was thinking more about how it makes you more of the person who you are. And when you find that out,
Yeah,
um, you run with it.
yeah. I've I'd like to say in my maturity, but that's an overstatement. But in my experience, I've definitely learned that whereas once upon a time I would have seen adversity as the worst thing ever, that we become who we become as a result of the resilience developed by the adversity we face. And so, therefore, if we don't face adversity, we miss opportunities to develop into who we absolutely can be and to live a completely different life, the one that's promised to us, as opposed to the one that we end up with.
It's spot on. I truly believe that everything you go through in life is for a purpose. It's for a reason.
Mm.
And nobody anywhere in the world gets through life unscathed. Not possible. We're all going to have troubling times, challenging times, difficult times. And I know you hear that, well, it's how you react to it kind of a thing. It but it we learn, we go to even survival mode you talk about.
Mm.
People will learn from this. And I truly hope they do. And I truly hope that this conversation and what I try to do with my work in Australia will help. Um, but we learn from every experience. I mean, imagine when you were young and you went to the first funeral. You didn't know how to act, right? But everybody was sad. You go to your first wedding as a child or something, and everybody's drinking, woo, and having fun and everything else. And you learn from those experiences and you develop, and we become sponges. But um, it's every experience all the way through adulthood. Even into even as high up as my age. I'm still learning all the time. In fact, I was a terrible student when I was younger. Terrible. I hated school. Now I can't learn enough. So things can change.
I do like the you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay statement. It gives me a certain level of comfort in the I have a desire to know everything. Teach me, show me. Let's have great conversations and introduce me to new people. And I want to go and know what it's like to be a billionaire and help me do this and show me this. And I want to absorb and experience it all. But then by the same token, there are the oh, so I made a decision on the basis of X, Y, and I didn't know about Z. And so that hasn't quite worked out the way that I thought it would. Okay, now I have a decision to make about what does that mean about me? And thankfully, because of the work that is available in the world these days, we can have a significant event take place that can be absolutely soul crushing. But as you've just said, in your case, you found your identity in the trading floor, which was right. I am not the one that curls up into a ball and gives up. I'm the one that says, right, I'm strapping up the boots, military style. Let's go. Let's adopt the FAFO mentality and roll the dice again because, hey, what's the worst that can happen? We're already here.
Right. Exactly. It's anything short of what kills you makes you stronger, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it's hard to keep that mind frame and that mindset, but it is true. And look, I'm one who's always been willing to risk pretty much everything
Mm.
in order to accomplish what I feel I can accomplish. Um, I'm super high risk, not a good thing to be, folks. Um, Manage your risk. In the pits, we used to say there were people who were afraid to trade. They'd get in there and they'd be afraid to trade. And the golden rule was make the trade, manage the risk. And
Mhm.
that's true with anything in life.
Mm.
Make a decision and manage it. But continue to move forward, and even if it's a bad decision, It's better than no decision.
I'm so glad that you said that. That is so important. I just want to highlight that. And we need to make sure the key, absolute key here is decisiveness. Once that decision is made, we do not spend time regretting it. We do not spend time wishing we hadn't. We do not spend any time there. We look at the decision, we've evaluated the decision adequately and said, right, this is my call. And once you draw that line in the sand and say, this is my call, there's complete ownership behind that, regardless of how it pans out. Whether you have your expectations met or exceeded, or if you find yourself in that position where it's, well, reality is not quite what I expected. Either way, you don't go back and second guess the person that made the decision. You can
No,
evaluate the decision and say, okay, knowing what I know now, would I have made that call? Yes, I absolutely would have, and it just didn't work out. Or no, I wouldn't have because I now know X. But we don't spend time back there punishing ourselves for a decision that's been made and an outcome that has evolved because there's no benefit there.
we all say we don't judge, but we judge. And there are those who like to take the credit of others' successes, and there are those that like to push off the faults of their own onto others. Um, and that's unfortunate because none of us were put here to judge anybody else. And as I agree with you, you have to make decisions. I'm now part of several businesses in various parts around the world. I have to make quick decisions every day, all the time, and otherwise things stop. And if things stop, there's a lot of people that get hurt. And think about that. You're not alone in this world. There are people that surround you, that support you, that you don't even know exist. There are people that are wishing you the very best. You probably may not even know their names, but you know, but you also have people that are relying on you, and you may not know them either. But keep that. I don't want to put weight on people's shoulders to bring more stress out, but it goes both ways. And what I'm saying is we can't do anything alone in this world. We have to have others supporting us and helping us. It just you can't do it any other way. Do you think
And
you've done it all
responsibility
by
is a
yourself
privilege.
alone? I'll laugh
Oh,
all day long at you.
gosh, no way. That's ego speaking, right? It's like, I did this, I'm self-made. It's like, okay, if you want to think that, that's okay. But we could probably crumble that perception in 30 seconds.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And the mentality of we need to be kind to ourselves and understand ourselves. You talk about living life with intention, which is such a great phrase, and it talks to really that stepping into being present, making decisions, ownership, accountability, all of the great stuff that responsibility brings. And currently, we're in a phase in the world where accountability seems to be dropping off. And if you can throw a general statement out there of, well, we changed our position, then suddenly it's okay for you to say one thing and backflip and do something completely different. What are your thoughts on that with regards to what would a man, an uncommon man, be like? Is he the one that's accountable? And how would you expect that to show up in example in your house situation? How does
Uh,
accountability for an uncommon man show up there?
an uncommon man, I would think, would take ownership,
Mm,
and action, um, not one to stand by. And there aren't there's too many common men and in bad positions, and that may or may not have some control over our lives, whether it's through politics or finance of some sort, that don't deserve to be where they are. And then there are the men that are out there doing it and making things happen and trying to make the world a better place. And I hate to put it this way, but this is what I'm trying to do. I know these are challenging financial times for everybody, and trust me, selling books does not make you wealthy. I'm sorry, but it's
No, you're not a multimillionaire yet, Bill.
no, I'm not a
Someone's got to be
internet
responsible for that messaging because
bestseller
I'm
selling
sure.
5 million. Yeah, no, yeah, and the book is a tool for me to reach people,
Yeah,
um, and but that's the way it has always been for me from the get-go. But what it has done is it has opened up
yeah.
opportunities for me to work with all different kinds of people, whether it's the prison folks that we're trying to help, or the military folks that we're trying to help, or the Salvation Army, the homeless people that we're trying to help. It's just it opens up worlds, and I think that's the uncommon man looks at things kind of that way. Says, okay, this doesn't taste good what I've got in front of me right now. So what can I do to make it taste better?
So how
And
do you do that, Bill? You're working with some pretty varied groups, and as you mentioned, money is fundamental to everybody. We can't live without it. It exists. It's
right,
part of everybody's life. So would you work with the military in a different way to how you would work with a welfare group?
yes, because there's different aspects. A military group is a different kind of person and who is transitioning, say, to civilian life. They are not without funds. They are not without skills. They are not of a mindset where, woe is me, the world has stomped on me and I'm down and I'm out, like
Mm,
you might with homeless people. Homeless people have just lost, they've given up, they've lost confidence. Um, they don't want to try anymore. So it's a completely different set of people. And I know that happens to all kinds of folks at different levels. Um, Giving up is never the answer. You can't give up. You can never give up. I mean, I'm in a better spot right now. And I knew growing up, I was told in my family I was going to be what was called a late bloomer. So I thought, boy, I can't wait till I get to my 50s when I'm really going to rock and roll and be doing good stuff. And then that came and went.
But
and,
hang on. I was due for something right about now.
and,
When's it coming?
right. But then I turned 60 and it was like, well, now I might as well give up because we all are supposed to retire and nobody's going to hire a 60-year-old guy like me for
Mm,
anything. So, I might as well just give up and figure out, okay, what can I do? Work at Walmart as a door greeter or, something like that
mm,
just to bring some money in.
mm.
And, but I said, no, no, don't give up. You're, you're here for a purpose. There is a purpose for every single person. There's a gift every single person has. They need to learn if they can, what that gift is, and then how to use that
Purpose.
to help themselves and help others.
Purpose drives everything.
And that's when you're really super happy in life.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have amazing relationships with other people. It just, there's so much more to life that you see that is so unbelievable. Um, and that's where I talk about trying to help people learn how to get control of their money. Because once they have an idea of how to control it, now they're happier, they're more productive, better relationships. But the reality is they're not worried about money every day, all day long.
How do
So
you
that,
shift that?
yeah,
You
well,
just spent time talking about stressful environments, governments that are outspending money that the constituents are paying for. Taxes are on the rise. We've got interest rate rises. We've got what you can only really express as deceit in the marketing world and in the communications world. Marketing comes out and says X, and you go, well, hang on, it's actually not that. But that's the message that's spread and understood and accepted. How do you start disconnecting from all of that noise if you're a person that's sitting there with nothing or perhaps even a massive debt? You've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. You're filled with shame. You haven't told anyone yet. You're guilted. You don't want to give up, but you're stuck in this black box of, I don't know how to change this. I don't know where to go, what to do.
that's the great question. I don't know what to do, and that's the beginning of giving up. And so you really want to avoid that. and I can only speak for Americans. I get to spend a number of days in Sydney and met some amazing people. Love the city, love the people there. Um, but that's where things can get dark. And
Mm.
the one thing in the U.S. is a lot of us folks don't do what I call due diligence.
Mm.
They don't do their homework. They don't
Yeah.
look things up. They take for granted what they are told. All the things you just listed is propaganda. It's all about money.
Mm.
But life is not all about money. I know that's all we think about. That's all we see in the news. That's all we hear about. Governments, increasing the debt by X amount per day. Interest rates going up, and everything's you know, that doesn't help. It doesn't help, and I personally don't know how any American news reporter can sleep at night telling
Mm.
all the BS and lies that they tell,
Yeah.
uh, because it just generates, it generates money, right? Gets the commercials, gets people watching. Um, you got to get away from that.
Yeah.
You have to unhook from that, because that's just bringing you down. And there's a reason why that's being done. It's to bring you down, to
Mhm.
control you. Because once you're
Interesting.
controlled, they can do anything they want.
Mm.
They being the higher echelon. We talk about in the US, affordability. All the prices have gone up, affordability. And I just sit here and I'm like, I don't get it. If everything costs so much more, and it even costs so much more to produce a product or a service and get it to market, why is it that the Fortune 500 companies for like 6 quarters in a row have made record profits? It's because we're too dumb. We're looking this way at those interest rates and all the prices, and they're price gouging us over here, and we don't even know. You see, that's what's going on all over the world. Is they're getting us to look one way. Look at in America, we have a new story every 1 or 2 days because of, either it's Trump blowing up or somebody else blowing up, and then they change it to, oh, it's the White House ballroom. Well, really? It's a pivot. It's to get you to forget about other things, and we just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit we see that play out a lot. And once there's a common term that's used at the moment, the matrix. Once you release yourself from the matrix, and once you realize the rules of the matrix, suddenly it's, oh, uh, latest thing, the Epstein files. A massive red flag. Look over here. Look over here. Look over here. Look all the stuff that's going on over here. But nothing ever came of it. And then in the background, you hear, well, the Senate just passed this, the House just passed this just happened, that just happened over here where no one's looking. It's like a magician's trick. And suddenly it's,
I,
oh, what's going on over there? Well, meanwhile, the coin's here behind the back.
exactly, exactly. It's like, so to give it a perspective. Concentrate on the things you can control.
Mm.
Let go of the things you cannot control.
Yeah.
And do your homework, do due diligence, become aware. Because once you are aware, you can gain control. But as long as you're unaware, you have no control.
And that brings us beautifully into distraction. The more we have in front of us, the less we want to do what needs to be done, and the more we want to feed our desires. I have a collection of books here at the moment. I'm very deep in psychology, manipulation, and influence. And so I have about 6 different books ranging from the laws of power to the Puppet Master's Bible. And I'm fascinated by every single one of them. But if I sit on a public transport, for instance, and I'm reading one of these books, as I do often, the looks that you get are so fascinating where people are thinking all sorts of things. I had someone ask me one day, are you a spy? And I thought, that's a really interesting question. I said, no, what makes you think that? Well, the book you're reading, doesn't it teach you how to be a CIA spy? And I said, no, but what it does teach me is how manipulation and persuasion works. He said, well, why would you want to know that if you're not going to be a spy? I said, because we are in a world of influence and you need to understand how you are being influenced in order to make your own choices. Otherwise, the choices are made for you and you don't even know.
You made a conscious choice. You made a conscious choice to learn and not just accept.
Mm.
And so most people think, well, if I don't accept it, then I'm against it.
And against it
And,
has a cost. We see that cost
and
being showed every day.
exactly your cost is you still don't get it, because you don't know anything about it. We don't take the time.
Yeah.
We choose a side and then we just roll with it.
And sometimes we don't even actively choose the side, right? Sometimes we just stay silent and
Well,
say
the
nothing.
influences around us, whether it's our parents, our friends, our family, that can influence us. The culture's influence, there's all kinds of influences that affect us. And but you've made a choice,
Mm.
and we all have a choice. We
So tell me
sometimes
about your choices. What are your choices now as a man of your maturity, as opposed to the choices that you would have made in, let's say, even your 40s? How have they differed?
boy, I look back and I think that was dumb. Yeah, that was stupid. Yeah, that was dumb. Um, Choices when I was younger. Well, let's put it this way. My father once asked me when I was in my 40s if I thought he was a good father. And
Mm.
because I was taking it that my two sisters were kind of riding on him that he was a terrible father. And I said, look, the only thing I can believe in is I got to believe that you made the choice you made with the information you had at the time you had it. And that's the only way I could answer that question. Um, so would I go back and change things? Sure, I think anybody would. And you know, did I make mistakes? 1,000, 100,000, 200, a million mistakes. Yeah. Did I fail? My wife quit counting 15 years ago. So I've tried to start so many businesses and failed so many times, but it's okay. Failure is a stepping stone to success. You have to go through the trials and tribulations of learning. It isn't just a God-given right that you're just going to be, oh, I've got a great idea. This is going to make me millions and it's all going to be perfect in 6 months. And so I start spending all kinds of money now, and then it doesn't work out. Now I'm really in trouble.
Mm.
You know,
So I'm
it's
interested to know, Bill, your wife and you have been married for quite some time. You've been through the highs and lows together. What role has she played?
a tremendous role. We've been together. We're over 35 years now, and like I said, back in 2005 when I built the house, we were doing great, and life was very, very good. And 2 years, 3 years later, life got really hard, and my career was over. Then she lost hers. She got hers back with her old company, brought her back, and which was a huge, deal to be asked to come back. And she thrived very well. She supported the family for many years, and I can tell you as a man, that's a tough thing to take because we were raised that the man supports the family, and but now I'm in that generation where we're dual income families everywhere, right? My generation, boomers, are dual income families because we had to be, because we wanted more money, because we wanted to look like we had more money, because and it just perpetuated, and for many years, my wife has supported the family, and at times while I was starting businesses and failing and starting and failing, starting and failing, make some money here. For some reason, I could always find a way when we truly needed money. I'd find a way to get it. I'd find a way to make it, and but it would be short lived. So I give all credit to my wife for the fact that we were able to raise our family. We were able to maintain our relationship, and we were able to go through changes that no generation had ever seen.
And how would you define your relationship with money now?
It's not much different. I'll be honest with you. Again, my father said to me when I was in my 40s, because why are you in the world of finance when money has never driven you? And it still doesn't. Money doesn't drive me. Impact. Impact versus income. That's what drives me. That's why I want to reach 90,000 military personnel changing to civilian life each year. That's why I want to work with Salvation Army. I want to work with with school systems, and I want to work with people in other countries, and because I want to make an impact. This isn't about making money. That'll come. That happens. But if you're only focused on making money, you'll never be happy because it'll never be enough.
I think that's a good point. That's brilliantly said because at the end of the day, if our focus is money and we're not in control of money, then we're really giving away our power to something external to us, and that is a huge risk.
Trust me, you won't be happy. I was a retirement strategist for a number of years after the trading pit days, and I kept telling people, you better have something to do when you're in retirement because you don't want to be sitting there with nothing to do, and all of a sudden you're going to start thinking back on your life. And if you aren't happy with what went on, that flame's going to go out. That flame that's still in you. I saw it in my father. He chased the almighty dollar, and we moved from state to state, left one sister in one state, another one in another state, left me in a state, kept moving around because he was chasing the dollar. And I knew when he was retired and sitting at home, and I'd visit him, you could see it in him. That he was like, "What did I do? I got nothing." I mean, he had, he wasn't super wealthy. He had some money. I mean, he was middle class, um, but he wasn't happy. And I've seen that over and over and over and over again, right? 1,000 times. You chase the almighty dollar, you'll never be happy.
I do find myself referring back to the Eminem song "Lose Yourself," where he says you've got one shot. And I think that that's something we forget. We get so caught up with our external environment and what's going on with all the noise and the stress and the being on the hamster wheel of the work and the family and the life and the stuff that we forget we've got one shot. And it's very easy to find ourselves in a position. The Last Thoughts of the Dying is the book that talks about this. Where what's your number one regret? I didn't take the shot. I didn't kiss the girl. I didn't risk the money. I didn't buy the house. I didn't put it down. I didn't. And it's all about this perception of I've got time, I've got time, I've got time, because we can't handle the stress that we have associated with I don't have time. It's very few people that can get up in the mornings. I have a friend of mine, very wealthy friend. He has this mentality, which is, I don't have time. The time is now. There is no tomorrow. And he lives on the basis of there is no tomorrow. So therefore, I must do what I must do today. And so he is very good at having a very high risk tolerance, which is probably not somewhere my nervous system would feel very happy in at all. It's worked really
Well,
well for him.
yeah, there's folks that can't stand the people that say I don't work a day in my life because I love what I do.
Mm.
And let me tell you, I spent 50 some years looking at people like, yeah, lucky you, and I hated those kind of people. But that's where I say, you know, try to find out what your gift is. Try to find out what drives you, what you like, and we all like to help other people. If you ask anybody what they like most about what they do, ultimately it comes down to helping people. But find out what's within you where you can make an impact, and then you will know what it feels like to never work a day in your life.
Speaking of that, Bill, if you were to give people three top tips on how to manage money and not have money manage you, what would they be?
Well, unfortunately, the one thing nobody wants to do, and that's a budget, but it's not so you know where the fixed costs are and the variable costs are. It's where there's incidentals. It's where you spend the money you have left over after you've paid all the bills. If you could learn what drives you to spend that money,
Mm.
and then you'll start to question why you're doing it. Question things like, do I really need to pay $550 a month for a car for 60 months? Because we don't look at it like that's $550 for 60 months that you don't have for
Mm.
anything else, including opportunities, including when life happens, including a medical incident or, a child breaking their arm or a car breaking down. We don't look at things that way. So question why you're spending the money, and stop signing up for everything to get a discount or a free sandwich or a free burger or 20% off clothing in the store this day, and I can put it on a credit card and don't even have to spend any money today. And don't borrow money to pay debt. It's another one. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is when you take on a loan that will help you increase income in the future, like a business loan. Bad debt is things that it will depreciate, that you will never see that money again,
So a car.
like a car. Yeah. So that's the crux of it. Really comes down to question how you spend your money.
Which brings me nicely into a very interesting space we're in at the moment. You talked about that you'd lost your job in the stock market because technology shifted. We're in an AI race at the moment, and technology is definitely shifting. In fact, the global digital currency is inevitable by all means. It looks like we don't really get much of a choice in this, depending on who you talk to, of course. So let's
Sure.
play devil's advocate and make the assumption that the GDC does come in. We have a global digital currency. Everyone has their digital IDs. It's all hooked up. Cash doesn't exist. Any types of investments outside of digital investments don't exist. We look at social currency in China at the moment and what's happening as a result of people who both choose to or decide not to opt out, and also those who do opt out and what happens to them. What are your thoughts on the future of digital currency and how it will change our world?
Well, it's here to stay for now. Um, Over thousands of years, we've gone through many different types of currencies, and the only ones that survive are gold and silver. So not a bad investment, folks. But right now it looks like they're here to stay. But people can argue that where's the underlying value? What's it based on? That's what I just don't get and understand. Well, there isn't a currency in the world that has that.
No. I mean,
That
we just spoke about it in relation to the stock market, right?
Stop wasting your time asking that question. You've got to learn to ask smarter questions. Where's it going to go? There's a book that was written, I think, in 1999. I met the authors, but it's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, I know the book.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular book, and
Yeah.
and it's happening again.
Yeah.
Okay, this happened in the Industrial Revolution. Cotton gin came out, and that could do the work of 20 workers. So they were out of work. What were they going to do? They had to adjust. They had to pivot, and so they moved to the cities where there were more jobs. The AI, yes. Is AI going to take over jobs? Yes. Is it going to create other jobs? Yes. So instead of crying about it's taking over your job, why don't you learn what jobs are needed to support that
Yeah.
and maybe get involved in that world? I tell entrepreneurs, I said, look, you shouldn't be out there chasing the money, hunting, hunting, hunting. You should be harvesting. Set up your work in a way in which money is coming to you instead of you chasing after it.
Mm.
And I,
So attract it as opposed to chase it.
yeah, yeah. If you're a hunter, it's going to be a hard life. If you're a
Mm.
harvester, um, you're going to enjoy more of what life has to offer.
Which brings me nicely into a point that I wanted to discuss before we wrap up with regards to money and spirituality. If you look at the world at the moment, there's a big push that money is the spiritual game. And we talk about abundance, and people talk about money codes and quantum leaping, and you have to have an abundance mindset, and whatever you think and whatever you feel is an example of what will have come to you, etc. It's very much a spiritual game. There are different beliefs, belief structures, thought processes in relation to that. What are your thoughts with regards to money and spirituality, or perhaps even faith?
Abundance doesn't really relate to money. Abundance is going to relate to different aspects of life, harvests, family, um, communities, and things of that nature. And I wasn't a spiritual person until 2009, and my kids were in Catholic school, and I said, you know what, I should go through the program because, I should have some skin in the game for my kids. Lo and behold, I fell in love with it. Excuse me. And long story short, in January 29th of 2022, I literally got tapped on the shoulder by my Lord, and he asked me to serve. And it's not a question. You don't say, nah, I'm not good for that right now.
Sorry,
For
I didn't hear
me,
that. I will block you.
yeah, for me, I'm like, I'm all in. What do you want?
Yeah.
But it's still challenging. And what he was asking me to do was to stop trying to educate one person at a time on financial literacy as an advisor and start educating the masses.
Mm.
And what he didn't do is he didn't tell me how to do that. He didn't show me the path. He just said, just go do it. And so I failed, as I had so many thousand times before, for the first 2 years. And then I just looked up and I said, this isn't working. I said, could you give me a hint? Could you help me out a little bit here? And he did. And look, I never thought, even 6 months before I wrote this book, I never thought I would write a book in my life. And I didn't know that I had this book in me. But the Lord, I realized, had given me all those hardships and all those challenges throughout life financially to be able to write this book. Because this book is a conversation of what to expect in life. It is not telling you what to do with your money. It's a
And I do
conversation.
like it. It's a great book.
Thank you.
It
It's
really is.
just a
I find
conversation
it,
between you and I.
it's easy to read. It's not instructional. It's guidance based. There are choices in this book. And I like the fact that at no stage are you trying to come off as someone who knows better. It's just, hey, here's what I've learned. Here's what I've done. Here are some foundational things that I think will absolutely change your life if you adopt them. And they have
Yes.
changed mine.
Well, thank you. I truly appreciate that because we're going back to the impact versus income. And so I'm doing this for the Lord. I'm just the servant. I'm just the tool, is how I look at it. And so that is why I can honestly say I'm after impact and not income. I know the greater impact I have will generate income,
Mm.
but focus on the impact.
And that's the
And
indication of a kingdom builder, right? We're not interested in what we build in this world, it's what we build for the greater good. It's outside
yeah,
of us. We understand that
I,
we'll be taken care of regardless.
and honestly, over the last probably 3 weeks or so, I've just said, you know what, Lord, I'm just going to let you run things and handle it. I'm here when you call me. I'll do whatever you want. And boy, he keeps me busy. But I don't worry about so many things anymore. About making that appointment, about meeting this people, or having to get this done or that done. If it needs to get done, he'll let me know. And
Mm.
so I've relieved that stress off of me. And it's I wish this upon everyone. I truly do.
Well, you know what, Bill, that seems like a perfect place for us to end up this conversation. I would absolutely love to thank you for your time. As always, it has been a genuine, heartfelt, open conversation where two people can just share thoughts in relation to what we believe and why. I truly believe that the information you have in your book is something that everybody should take in. And even if you just invest the time in reading the book and take away one thing, that you need to be intentional about your money and
Yeah.
just start being intentional, asking questions about, do I need that? Can I make a different decision about that? Why am I buying that? What's the driver behind that need? These are all such simple questions that we can ask at any time that will have such a huge impact on our financial future and also on our experience of life. So thank you so much for coming in today. Truly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you next time you're in Sydney.
Joe, so thank you so much for having me. You're a wonderful host, and I assure you we will continue our conversation at dinner my next trip.
Sounds fun.
Promise you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back. We'll see you again next week.